Have you ever noticed that the more you try to prove a narcissist wrong, the more broken you feel? You argue, you defend, you hope they'll finally see the truth, but they never do, and somewhere in that endless battle, you start losing you. The truth is healing doesn't happen when you win against them. It begins the moment you stop needing to. Healing starts when you stop needing validation from the narcissist. That's the moment your real recovery begins, not when they finally admit what they did, not when they apologize, not even when karma seems to catch up to them. Healing begins the very second you stop waiting for them to see your worth. When you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, whether romantic, familial, or professional, you're slowly conditioned to measure your value through their reactions. You start living for the small crumbs of approval, the rare moments when they smile, agree, or praise you. You chase that approval because, for a brief second, it feels like peace, but that peace isn't real, it's conditional. It's fragile. It depends on someone who's incapable of seeing you as an equal soul, and the longer you chase that validation, the further you drift from your authentic self. Narcissists thrive on control. They shape your reality by keeping you uncertain about who you are. Every time you seek reassurance, did I do something wrong? Do you still care about me? Can we fix this? You hand them emotional power. It's not weakness, it's human. You wanted love, understanding, connection. But with a narcissist, those things become weapons. The very qualities that make you compassionate become the things they manipulate. When you stop needing their validation, you shatter the illusion that they have any authority over your worth. It's like waking up from a long, exhausting dream. At first, it's disorienting. You might feel lost, even empty, because you've built your emotional compass around their approval. But that emptiness isn't a void, it's space. Space for your voice, your peace, and your truth to come alive again. You begin to remember who you were before they rewrote your story. You start hearing your own thoughts again, feeling your own emotions without the constant second guessing. The silence that once felt unbearable begins to feel sacred. You no longer check your phone, waiting for their message. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head, hoping they'll finally understand. You start to understand yourself instead. True healing doesn't demand that they change, it asks that you stop needing them to. You may never get closure from them, and that's okay. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself when you decide the story ends here. You validate your own pain, you acknowledge your own courage. You begin to live from a place of inner wholeness, not external approval. And that's when your power returns. You realize you don't need them to see you because you finally see yourself. You don't need them to say sorry because you've forgiven yourself for staying too long. You don't need their recognition because you've reclaimed your reflection. Healing in its truest form is not about changing the narcissist. It's about no longer needing their validation to feel alive. When you stop waiting for them to see your worth, you start living like you already know it, and that's when freedom begins. Silence is not surrender, it's strength. There's a quiet kind of power that comes when you no longer feel the need to respond, explain, or prove your side of the story. In the beginning, silence feels unbearable. It feels like you're losing, like you're letting the narcissist win. But in truth, silence is not about defeat. It's about reclaiming your energy from the chaos that once consumed you. When you're entangled with a narcissist, every word you say can be twisted, every explanation used against you. They thrive on reaction, on pulling you into endless arguments, circular conversations, and emotional traps that drain your spirit. They don't argue to understand, they argue to dominate, and every time you try to make them see reason, you step right back into their game. Your words become fuel for their control, your defense becomes their victory. So when you choose silence, you're not giving up, you're stepping out. You're refusing to play a game that has no end and no peace. Silence becomes your boundary, your armor, your act of self-respect. It's the quiet declaration that says, I no longer need to convince you of my truth. In that silence, something profound begins to happen. You start to hear yourself again. The noise of their manipulation, the echo of their blame, the weight of their expectations, all of it begins to fade. What replaces it is clarity. You begin to recognize that you don't have to fight for your worth, you already have it. You begin to understand that peace doesn't come from being right, it comes from being free. Of course, silence isn't always easy. It can feel lonely. You might crave the last word, the moment of justice, the satisfaction of proving your point. But healing asks something higher of you. It asks for faith, faith that walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've risen above. The narcissist may interpret your silence as weakness, but that's because they can't comprehend true strength. Strength to them is control. Strength to you is release. Over time, silence becomes your superpower. You begin to see how peaceful it feels not to explain yourself to someone who has already decided not to understand you. You stop chasing clarity from a person who thrives on confusion. You no longer look back to check if they noticed your absence because you've started noticing yourself. Silence doesn't mean there's nothing left to say. It means everything that needed to be said no longer matters. It means you've chosen to protect your peace over your pride. It means you've stepped into a higher level of strength, one that doesn't shout, one that doesn't prove, one that simply is. In the end, silence is not surrender. It's the sound of your power returning. It's the moment you stop reacting and start healing. It's the quiet before the new beginning, the one that belongs entirely to you. Acceptance is not approval. Those words can feel heavy at first, especially when you've survived the emotional storm of a narcissistic relationship. Accepting what happened, accepting who they are, and accepting what will never be, it sounds unfair. It feels like letting them off the hook, but true acceptance isn't about excusing their behavior. It's about freeing yourself from being emotionally chained to it. When you've been hurt by a narcissist, your mind naturally fights to make sense of it. You replay conversations, searching for what you could have said differently. You look for signs you missed, red flags you ignored, and moments where you could have changed the outcome. You hope that if you can just understand why they did what they did, it will hurt less. But that endless search for answers only deepens the wound. Because the truth is, you'll never find logic in dysfunction. Acceptance is the moment you stop trying to rewrite the past. It's when you stop expecting closure from someone who never gave you honesty to begin with. It's when you realize that understanding their motives won't change their actions or erase your pain. Acceptance is not giving them permission to hurt you again. It's giving yourself permission to move forward without needing their acknowledgement. To accept means to see things as they are and not as you wish they would be. The narcissist may never say sorry. They may never recognize your suffering or take responsibility for their cruelty. Waiting for that moment keeps you tied to their emotional control. But when you accept that they are who they are, limited, wounded, incapable of empathy, you stop expecting something they cannot give. And in that surrender of expectation, you regain your peace. Acceptance also invites compassion, not necessarily for them, but for yourself. It's realizing that you did the best you could with the knowledge you had. It's forgiving yourself for staying too long, for believing too much, for loving too deeply. Self-compassion becomes the bridge between pain and peace. It tells your heart you were trying to heal even when you didn't know how. And here's the beauty of it: once you accept reality, you become free to create something new. You no longer waste energy trying to fix what was broken beyond repair. You redirect that energy into rebuilding yourself, into rediscovering joy, purpose, and connection outside the chaos. You stop revolving around their gravity and step into your own light. Acceptance doesn't mean you condone what happened. It means you've outgrown the need to relive it. It's the point where anger softens, confusion clears, and peace quietly takes its place. So no, acceptance isn't approval, it's liberation. It's the brave act of saying, this is what it was, and I choose to rise anyway. And that's where healing truly begins, not in changing them, but in choosing yourself. You can't control the narcissist, but you can control your response. That simple truth is both painful and powerful. Painful because deep down you've tried everything explaining, reasoning, proving, pleading, hoping that if you just said the right words or loved them the right way, they would finally see you, finally change, but powerful because once you realize that you never had control over their behavior, you stop wasting your energy trying to manage the unmanageable. And that's when your healing begins. A narcissist's greatest illusion is control. They thrive on making you believe that your reactions dictate their moods, that if you behave differently, things will be better. So you start walking on eggshells, you silence your needs, shrink your voice, and constantly calculate your every move, all to keep the peace. But peace built on fear isn't peace at all, it's submission disguised as safety. The truth is, you will never be able to control how a narcissist speaks to you, how they treat you, or how they twist the truth. But you can control whether or not you engage. You can control how much of your emotional energy they receive. You can control your boundaries, your tone, your time, your distance. Every time you choose calm over chaos, clarity over reaction, you take back your power piece by piece. Controlling your response doesn't mean becoming numb. It means choosing consciousness over compulsion. It means recognizing that their behavior is a reflection of their wounds, not your worth. When you learn to pause instead of react, you break the very pattern that feeds their control. You stop dancing to their rhythm. You stop playing their game, and the moment you stop reacting is the moment they lose power over you. At first, it will feel unnatural. You'll want to defend yourself, to correct the lies, to expose the truth. But every response keeps you tied to their energy. Silence, distance, and emotional detachment are not weakness, they are self-preservation. You're not ignoring reality, you're choosing peace over poison. As you practice this, something remarkable happens. Your nervous system begins to heal. You stop living in constant survival mode. You no longer wake up anxious, wondering which version of them you'll face today. You begin to realize that your peace no longer depends on their approval or behavior, it depends on your choices. You start creating small moments of stillness, small acts of self-care, small boundaries that rebuild your confidence from the inside out. The narcissist will never change because of your effort, but you can transform your world through your awareness. And that's the real victory, not fixing them, but freeing yourself. You may not control their words, their lies, or their manipulation, but you can control your truth, your silence, and your path forward. And when you master your response, you don't just survive the narcissist, you rise above them. The need to be right keeps you trapped in their story. It's one of the hardest truths to accept, especially after being manipulated, gaslit, and misunderstood by a narcissist. You've spent months, maybe years, trying to make them see the truth. You replay conversations in your head, thinking if you could just explain it better, they'd finally understand. You gather evidence, remember details, and build your case, hoping one day they'll say, "You're right," but that day never comes. Because with a narcissist, being right was never the point, control was. When you argue with a narcissist, you step directly into their arena. They don't fight for truth, they fight to dominate. They twist facts, shift blame, and provoke emotional reactions until you feel crazy. You begin defending yourself, explaining your intentions, and pleading for fairness, but all of it feeds their power. To them, the argument isn't about resolution, it's about distraction. As long as you're fighting to be right, you're still engaged in their game. The need to be right keeps you emotionally invested in someone who thrives on keeping you off balance. It locks you into a cycle of defending your reality instead of living it. And over time, you lose sight of what actually matters: your peace, your clarity, your healing. The truth is, being right doesn't heal you. It doesn't undo the harm, it doesn't bring closure, and it certainly doesn't change them. But letting go of the need to prove your truth does something far more powerful. It gives you freedom. You no longer chase validation from someone incapable of giving it. You no longer waste your voice on deaf ears. You stop performing for a person who only claps for your pain. When you stop needing to be right, you shift the focus from them back to you. You begin to realize that your peace of mind is worth more than any victory in an argument. You learn that not responding doesn't mean you're weak. It means you value your energy too much to waste it. You understand that truth doesn't need to be proven, it only needs to be lived. Letting go doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you refuse to let it define your present. It means you can acknowledge the truth without needing the narcissist to agree with it. You know what you experienced, and that's enough. Their denial doesn't erase your reality. Their silence doesn't cancel your healing. So the next time you feel the urge to prove your point, pause, ask yourself, what am I really trying to win? Because the real victory isn't making them see the truth, it's no longer needing them to. The real win is walking away with your integrity intact and your peace restored. When you release the need to be right, you reclaim the power to be free. And that freedom, quiet, steady, and unshakable, is something no narcissist can ever take from you. True healing is choosing peace over power struggles. After enduring the chaos of a narcissistic relationship, your mind becomes conditioned to fight, to prove your worth, defend your truth, and protect your dignity. Every argument feels like a battle for justice, a desperate attempt to be seen and heard, but the truth is, narcissists don't seek understanding, they seek control. And the longer you engage in their power games, the further you drift from your peace. Healing begins the moment you decide that peace matters more than winning. It's natural to want validation. You've been gaslit, blamed, and silenced. You want the narcissist to admit the truth, to apologize, to acknowledge what they did. But chasing that moment keeps you tied to their dysfunction. Narcissists feed on emotional reaction, whether it's love, anger, or pain. Every time you argue, explain, or defend yourself, you hand them the very energy they crave. You think you're fighting for fairness, but they see it as proof they still control you. Choosing peace doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping out of the game entirely. It's realizing that no amount of confrontation can make them accountable. You cannot force empathy into someone who's built their identity around control. You cannot teach humility to someone who feeds on superiority. What you can do is choose not to participate in their drama. You can choose silence when they provoke. You can choose distance when they manipulate. You can choose calm when they expect chaos. At first, peace feels unnatural. It feels like surrender. You may feel guilty for not fighting back, as if silence means weakness. But true strength isn't found in endless resistance, it's found in stillness. The kind of stillness that refuses to be dragged back into confusion, the kind of peace that doesn't need to prove its worth. You begin to see that your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. As you choose peace more often, something beautiful starts to shift inside you. Your nervous system begins to settle, your thoughts become clearer. You stop replaying arguments in your head and start imagining your future instead. You realize that you can honor your truth without needing them to agree with it. You start to value your silence more than their validation. Choosing peace doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It means you've reached a higher level of awareness, one where you no longer let someone else dictate your emotional state. It means you can love yourself enough to walk away from what destroys you, even when it tries to pull you back in. In the end, healing isn't about proving the narcissist wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you can rise without revenge, live without chaos, and thrive without their approval. The power struggle ends the moment you choose peace, and that choice, quiet, grounded, and unwavering, is where your true freedom begins.